The funding for this video is provided by the amazing members of our Patreon. Also contributions from viewers like you. Thank you. Yeah, I started from PBS Kids. What you gonna do? Fight me? Anyway, roll the video. Around Christmas of last year, one of my good friends, G, of the YouTube channel The Cartoon Hotspot, suggested that I watch this anime series on Netflix called Trese, which you should check out if you haven't seen it. It's very, very much underrated. As the story follows a woman named Alexandra Trese who solves cases that have to do with supernatural. Throughout the season, we see flashbacks of when Alexandra was little and that her father brought her along to help solve cases. Because of her father's career and not really having much of a choice to be involved with this kind of work, it resulted in her being her full-time job when she became an adult, along with her being very cold and not open towards people. She reminds me a bit of Detective Demery from Murder Chose Me, as Demery felt like because murder being such a big part of his life as it affected his mother and his brother, he was interested in solving cases to help others because he understood the pain that it caused them. It's no secret that plenty of people deal with horrible things that happen to them during their childhood, and it still affects them later on in life and during adulthood. It's not even just with it affecting your childhood, it's more things that happened in the past and how they affect you in present day. My traumatic teen years, that I will not go into detail about, were full of so much fuckery, and that is why I cling so hard to the first Descendants movie and book when they came out when I was 16 years old. I could relate to plenty of the characters. But as time has passed, I still do love Descendants. I can't help but notice and point out all the things that was wrong with it. Because the more I watch other things and the more I read other things, I start to see the similarities with Descendants and see that those other things done it in a much better way. Yes, I am aware that Descendants is a family movie, but when I was 16, I saw the awful flaws in the movie and its main trope that carried it. Descendants is rooted in the dark and troubled past trope, and it did not do a very good job with it. But you want to know what movie did do a great job with it on that aspect? I'm just as shocked as you are. Netflix's Do Revenge.
Don't play with something that you should cherish for life, oh baby. Don't you wanna
Today's video is sponsored by the coldest water. If you've been following me since like 2020, you already know what's up. I love the coldest water. I enjoy working with this company because you want to know why? I don't like warm drinks. And as somebody that, oh my gosh, do y'all hear the cicadas outside? Yeah, that's how you know I live in the dirty South. One thing about living in the South is that 75% of the year, it's warm here. As someone that is a very, very summer loving, spring loving person, I love heat, I love warm weather. I do not like a warm drink, and since I go outside a lot for the sake of exercise and I love being in nature, my drinks tend to get warm. But with the coldest water, instead of that happening, I can just easily pour my drinks up into here and it'll keep it cold the entire day, and it is very convenient for me. Like I said, when I'm outside most of the time, when I am just enjoying nature, as I like to get work done sitting outside on the back patio, or if I'm just out running errands, if I need to go around from store to store and it starts to get warm in my car, my drinks will get warm if I have a plastic water bottle. But if I have my water bottle from the coldest water, it was much easier for me to stay hydrated and also enjoy what I'm drinking, because there have been so many instances before where I have literally been so thirsty and the only water that I had with me was just warm water and I had to drink it. I couldn't do it. If you guys are interested in any of the products from the coldest water, I will have a link down below for you guys. And thank you guys so much at the coldest water for sponsoring this video. What is the dark and troubled past trope? According to tvtropes.com, not .com, .org, girl, get it together. Something terrible happened to a character, some tragic event in their past that shaped a fundamental level of their personality. Long after the event is over, it still has a powerful influence on the character's life. The root effects are usually self-hatred via greatest failure and or personal horror, outward distress because of betrayed, inward callous cope in the outward hate because of the fraud. Bear with me. Fraudulent excuse such as abandonment, trauma, or death of a loved one. This can lead to either becoming an anti-hero or a hurting hero. For villains, this is the start of darkness, especially when the blatant cases of this trope will result in the character being seen as a sympathetic Sue. This is a trope that I personally think is not overdone because it can be done in so many different ways. Different things happen to people that affect how they are in present day, and that's realistic to life. Y'all wonder why Sam was always at Carly's house and not Carly? Her home life was terrible because of her mom being such a bad and lazy person, not being able to hold down a job, bringing creepy men to their home, and not having anything for her daughter to eat at their own place. I know in media we see many characters have wacky, tragic backstories ranging from them being attacked by monsters, parents being escorted in a spaceship accident, and forced to become a superhero. People tend to find these scenarios unrealistic, but it's really not. But thinking in a realistic setting, how do you think that scenario would affect you? People tend to forget about the given circumstances when it comes to the media that focus on things that don't happen in real life. These things are realistic. Traumatic events shape people into different ways. The dark and troubled past trope can work in two ways, as I mentioned earlier when I was reading directly from TV Tropes. That the person either lets what happened to them help them become a better person, or their trauma leads them to doing horrible things. From a writing perspective, either one works if you're able to get the point across well. And I personally think that it worked very well with Kim Possible's Shigo, because as she was younger, she was forced to becoming a superhero because she ended up getting powers unexpectedly. She did not ask to have the powers that she was given. And as her not really having control over her situation, as her being forced to be a superhero team with her brothers, she grew to resent it and began to be a horrible person like the people that she fought. Mainly because she felt like she didn't have a decision on what she wanted to do, so she ended up doing bad things as she was finally feeling like she could have her things her way. Her horrible decisions led to her becoming a criminal, and the only job that will pay her a livable wage is working for Dragon, who is evil. While Shigo's character stands out to me so much in the show because she is a great example of the dark and troubled trope done right when the person chooses evil over good.
a lifetime thing. I can give you what you want.
This movie right here, Do Revenge, is a movie where I already knew I was gonna go into it liking it, but I did not expect that last third of the movie to be so wild because, by the way, this contains Do Revenge spoilers, so you've been warned. Don't get mad at me if I spoil the movie for you. I won't spoil it all, but I'll make points. Now, Do Revenge is a movie that focuses on the dark, troubled past of two girls named Eleanor and Drea. As Drea's dark past comes from her coming from a low-income home, her mother always being absent, like we didn't even see her mother in the movie at all. Though she always talked about how her mother worked at night, so it can be assumed that her mom is asleep during the day or she's out probably doing other things. But her mother's never present at all. Honestly, this movie was giving Peanuts, because we ain't seen nobody mama or daddy. If you understand the Peanuts reference, comment Lucy and Schroeder down below. I want to know how many people actually got that. Anyway, let's continue. And comment for the sake of the algorithm. As Drea's mother was being absent, she had fake ass friends that didn't really care about her well being at all, especially when she needed them the most when her sex tape got leaked by her then boyfriend at the time. As the movie goes on, Drea begins to figure out how she was dealing with her trauma is what led to her becoming such a terrible person, and that what she really needed was a true friend, and she was able to find that in Eleanor, as fucked up as it was. Now, Eleanor's trauma is caused a bit by... I'm sorry, y'all. That's like stuff from my store sitting back there. You are wondering what that is. It's store stuff. Leave me alone. Eleanor's trauma is actually caused by Drea, as Drea was the person that lied on her when they were younger and causing Eleanor to become such a nasty person as Drea was, wanting her to get revenge on Drea. Like, Eleanor saw how vulnerable Drea had become after her sex tape had got leaked, and when Eleanor saw that Drea was shamed publicly, she joined in on it and began to cause her pain just as well. It's like Drea already had it bad. She was no longer the queen bee of the school. Y'all know how Barbie was in Peggy and Stocking? Drea was like the Latina version of that. She was no longer the top status. She was no longer the school's it girl. She literally was featured in Teen Vogue. Everybody wanted to be Miss Drea Torres. But that one thing that happened to her, it's giving Anna Karenina low-key, but that one thing happening to her caused so many people to change on her. And even though some people may not have, wanted to shame her for what she had done, they saw that the general public was doing it, and they were like, hey, people may think I'm weird if I hang out with her and this and that and the third. Because I remember, thinking back to a lot of my middle school and high school days, and I remember in Angry Black Girl, written by Alexis Jonde, which is a really great book that you guys should read. But Alexis was talking about how at the school that she went to, the girls that were labeled as hoes, nobody wanted to be their friend, and by nobody she meant other girls. And that was very realistic for my high school setting, because I remember when I was in the 9th grade, there was a girl's sex tape that did get leaked and spread around the school, and nobody wanted to be her friend and sit by her because they were afraid that if she associated with her, she'd be a hoe by association. Yes, it is true. A lot of people who went to American high schools can relate to this part, especially people that went to school in major cities. That happened all the time in middle school. If a girl get caught doing something nasty, everybody shames her, and then she's basically a friendless loser. And it happens in high school. So for them to do that trope so well in Do Revenge, I was pleasantly surprised, because I was like, yes, that is exactly how that goes down. As I was saying, Eleanor saw that she was being shamed publicly and saw how she was basically social outcasted for this horrible thing that happened to her, and decided to jump on that bandwagon, but she did it in a different way. She caught her in her most vulnerable state and took advantage of that. Both Eleanor and Drea's pain causes them to do horrible things to different people, and both of them are indeed bad people. But in the end of the movie, they both admit that they are awful people, and how them being mean wasn't making anything in their life better. Drea admitted that she hated being mean, and that we even get to see at one stage with Eleanor, when she realizes that what she's doing to Drea is awful, she just barely could even stomach it. I find it so funny because in the end of the movie, they still suck. Like, this is literally probably like a few days after the event happened, or even minutes after they both admitted that they were wrong. They're still terrible people, but you can see that they actually do want to make an effort to do better. Because they realized that what they really needed was a true friend, somebody that was there for them at their lowest points. And I'm gonna tell you now, having a friend, someone that's down for you and that cares for you, can honestly make so much of the trauma that you endure in your life and all the pain you're suffering with a tad bit better. Like, yes, please go to therapy. Go to therapy. But having a good friend that you can trust is also a great thing just as well. Drea didn't feel comfortable with letting her fake rich friends come to her house. And while Eleanor was rich like those other kids that went to their school, she wasn't elitist, if that makes sense. While she was rich, she was still a social outcast. And that's one thing I really did enjoy with Do Revenge, because oftentimes in media when we see that we have the rich kid stereotype, they're always seen as mean, rude, and snobby and whatnot. But with Eleanor, while she was rich, she did come from a wealthy family and she lived in a mansion, she still didn't fit in. She was still a social outcast. The people didn't really care that she had money. They just was not fucking with her. Drea didn't feel comfortable with letting her fake friends come to her house, but she was okay with Eleanor coming there because she realized that Eleanor was not one of those people that cared so much about money and status and all of that. And then Eleanor also realized that having someone, a human, your own age that cares about you can help you enjoy life. I love how at the end of Do Revenge, it's not like a drastic change in that they're perfect. We still see that they're both awful people, and it is going to take some time for them to do better. But we do see that they did rekindle their friendship, and they're going to work on becoming better people together. Unfortunately, we're gonna have to sit here and talk about when the trope is done poorly, and that is with Miss Disney's Descendants. Y'all know me. I love Descendants, as you guys see in the opening. And Descendants focuses on two groups of kids, the Auradine kids and the villain kids. The Auradine kids are basically the snooty, preppy, rich kids, and the villain kids are the kids that came from the hood. While all the Auradine kids are all rich and privileged, that doesn't really mean that they're happy. We did get a taste of that, but they didn't touch on it a little too good. Because when it was done well at one point, everything else in the movie just contradicted that, and it just felt very flat. Anyway, most of the characters in this movie, because it focuses on these younger people who are descendants of famous parents, like the Disney villains in these movies are portrayed to be like celebrities. Like, they're like infamous celebrities, and then the heroes are seen as celebrities that everyone loves and adore, and everyone has all these expectations on them for their children, because they expect them to be like their parents. While most of the characters are working on themselves and to become better people, it's not a bad thing. But the main reason why it was such a problem with Descendants is because it was done in such a short period of time. As Do Revenge was about 2 hours long, one, Descendants was only 100 minutes, and we're talking about the first movie, and spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't seen the second and third Descendants movie, it's about the same when it comes to the plot not doing well with its progression. They were trying to do so much in a short period of time with so many characters, so the development fell very flat for almost everyone with the exception of Mal, Audrey, and Ben, and that's even pushing it. That's not even good enough. The only person in this movie in this movie franchise I can really think that the dark and trouble trope worked well with Audrey is because we actually did get to see a bit of her trauma happen on screen, and everyone knew she was dating Ben, and then we found out that he broke up with her basically publicly in front of everyone, and he didn't even officially break up with her. He just announced randomly that he was in love with another girl. And then fast forward to the third movie, we see that trauma that she experienced from the first movie has led her to becoming an awful person and going around hurting everyone. And it was not done in the best way, because Audrey is a character, while she is technically antagonized, she wasn't really a villain for the most part until the third movie when they made her one. She had every right to keep her guard up, but because the other characters did not have much development with their dark and troubled past, it's like they shoved it all onto Audrey and it ended up just becoming sloppy and she was just being a brat the whole time, which isn't necessarily bad, but the people who caused her this pain didn't really change much as people. Ben changed for the most part, but then they fell really flat with Ben because they took so much of his character development away to focus on his girlfriend who later became his wife. And then Mal never changed. The characters that we did see change, they were barely featured, and the literal one that actually did change, who was Mal, kept going back to her old ways. Everyone knows that I despise Mal. I truly don't like Mal Bertha. Everyone fucking knows that. That's not a secret. If you're new here, this might be your first time hearing that, okay? The main reason why I have so many issues with Mal's character is that she's a horrible person that didn't learn. She didn't get better. She didn't get worse. She stayed the same. She's a terrible protagonist, and Mal is literally... her entire character is just the dark and troubled trope. That's literally everything that is to her. And she uses that as an advantage to get out of her things. Like, literally, so much of what happens in Descendants is her fault, and she doesn't even learn much of anything from it. She never learns from her mistakes. She doesn't become a better person, nor does she become a worse person than she already was. She just found a different way to be nasty. Which is frustrating because when you finally think Mal is changing, she doesn't. Because in the first movie, they had us fooled. They had us fooled with that first one. In the end, we did see that she changed a tad bit more. But then when you go and read the Rise of the Outlaws book, Rise of the Outlaws book, and then Return to the Outlaws, we see that she didn't really change that much in those book series. And then we skip to Descendants 2, and we see she didn't change either. She was still back to her old ways. She just found different ways of doing them. She was just finding new ways to be her nasty self. She basically ran the homeland, and then she wanted to run Oregon just as well. Why do y'all think she stayed with Ben? It's obvious that her and Ben were not compatible and that they were not a good fit for each other. But we know part of the reason why Mal stayed with him is because Ben had that kind of power, and she knew that if she wasn't with him, she would not have that kind of power over in Oregon. She would just be a regular schmegular person just like everyone else. And she didn't want that. Mal hated that she couldn't do things her way, which resulted in so much of the conflict that she had with Ben in the first place. Mal's dark and troubled past was holding back everyone else's development just as well. Like, I kid you not. Evie was hanging out Evie was hanging out with this guy named Doug, who does later on become her boyfriend. And when Mal was in a crisis and she needed help because she was about to go on a date with Ben, she literally just took Evie from him. And that's not even the only time she's done that. She constantly has taken Evie to go do stuff for herself. And it's irritating because she kept doing shit like that in the books, and she kept doing shit like that in the movies. She was taking time away from people for their personal growth, and I think what makes it so frustrating with her taking people away from their growth to come and help her, she didn't change, she didn't learn, she didn't grow, she didn't even become worse. She just stayed the most horrible person that she always was. It'd be one thing, like I said, with Shigo. Shigo gradually became worse of a person. Mal did not do that. While this movie had an ensemble cast, Do Revenge just focused on Dre and Eleanor for the most part. Those two characters are the main ones that need to have some type of change because they are the leads. Descendants 1 kept trying to focus on the dark and troubled past of about like 6 different characters in the time span of 100 minutes. Jay and Carlos's growth was only for about 10 minutes of the first movie, and they didn't really do shit in the last 2 except for clean up Miles' messes, and they had little snippets here and there, but they were very dry, we'll say that. The first movie we did see Evie change, but nothing much came out of it because she kept having to put her own personal growth aside for someone who wouldn't do better, who was Mal. What form of storytelling works for TV shows will not work for movies, because with movies, you have limited time. If Descendants wanted to focus on more than just 3 characters, fine, they could have done that. But they should have done it as a show if they weren't wanting to go about it that way. All the villain kids had dark and troubled pasts, even a few of the Oridon kids just as well. You'd notice if you read the books. Another problem with Descendants is that, one, a whole bunch of people, the canon's just terrible. Let's just go ahead and say that. But so much is omitted from the books. What's so frustrating about Descendants is that so much of the stuff that was in the books was omitted, but it was said to be canon to the story. It makes it so much confusing because the characters will go back and do plenty of the things that they did in the storyline before it in the next one, and it feels like no one was changing. The characters that are sidelined in the movies are still sidelined in the books just as well. Mal learns a lesson and then she goes back to her old ways. Descendants tried to focus on other characters while still wrapping it around Mal, and if they wanted to do that, they should have been able to flesh it out a lot longer. Because them trying to go back and forth with Mal and then the others just made it fall very flat. We feel like we barely know these characters or we don't know them well enough like this franchise wants us to. When we look at Descendants merchandise, they're not just selling merchandise for 3 main characters, they're selling it for numerous ones. So that goes to show you, hey, if I'm going to buy merch for this particular character, I want to have some type of care for them. Kind of hard to do that when they don't do much with the character in the first place. Y'all want to know why Jay merchandise did not sell very well when it came to Descendants? Because we didn't know shit about him. With Do Revenge, the side characters literally are just accessories to the main characters. Nothing significant happens with them because it's not supposed to. They are just there for them to have interactions with. Do Revenge doesn't push that we should care much for these characters, as when we see them, they're all together and barely have any individual scenes. Descendants had a lot of short little individual scenes that push this narrative that we should care about these characters because of their dark and troubled past, but it doesn't work because we barely get to see much of them later with their own arcs. They overcome what they struggle with. That's it. And then the rest is just taking up space in the background behind Mal, and then it just cuts to whatever the antagonist that she is dealing with. Descendants being for people of all ages does not give an excuse to have terrible storytelling. Kim Possible was on the same network as Descendants, and they did this trope very well. As Shiga was more prominent, and we do get to see some kind of change with her over time. We saw that Shigo became worse. Mal's dark and troubled past did not lead her into becoming a better or worse person. She just stayed the same. She was just pretty much the same in the books just as well. The only thing that she did change somewhat was in the animated series Wicked World. But guess what? That shit's not even canon. And as I said before, Descendants is a cash grab from the beginning. And it's just sad to see that a company who does this trope so well flops so hard with one of its most popular franchises. Hi, thank you guys so much for watching this video right here. I honestly have been really excited for this movie since last summer when I was an extra in it, and I was like, oh, this honestly looks like something that I would enjoy. And I'm glad to see that it did meet my expectations. And the main reason why I did it with this one particular trope is because I know that there were going to be loads and loads and loads of people making reviews about Do Revenge. And I didn't want, like, y'all know how I am. I didn't want my video to be the same as everyone else's. I wanted to talk about it from, like, a different perspective. And then I did notice the one entire thing about the dark and troubled past trope with this movie, and then I remember seeing it in other things that I was interested in and how it wasn't done well and how it was done well in another. So I just decided to combine all of those into one video. I hope you guys got a good understanding of what this trope is. Like I said, thank you guys for watching. If you guys want to know ways you can support me and my channel and every little thing I do, support me on Patreon. Most expensive tier is $5. The cheapest is $1. I also have Ko-fi. You guys are able to purchase exclusive behind the scenes video over there on Ko-fi. Also, just donations. I'm just thankful for all. I have merch at harriyannahook.com. Use code HOTSPOT30 for 30% off your order. Thank you guys so much at The Coldest Water for sponsoring today's video. The link to all of that will be down below. And also, I have some fun announcements. I have 2 books coming. two books. One is going to be a novella, and the other one is going to be a picture book. They will be available on my website, and it will be through ebook and physical copy, mainly because I know people overseas don't want to pay that high ass price for shipping. So yeah, that's the ebook. So it'll be way more accessible for all people. If you buy the physical copies, they will be signed by moi, and you have a special little gift that will be involved in those just as well. But yeah, I'm very excited. I'm very nervous because y'all, the process of me making this book was not easy. It was not quick. It was not fast. It was not cheap, but I'm very thankful and I'm very proud of myself that I've gotten to the stage and I'm going through with releasing it. It's a collection of essays. One is a collection of essays, and the next is like a picture book with a story and all that. I can't wait to share that with you guys. Last but not least, just to follow me on everything at Harriyanna, HARRI, Also, check out the Progenies. It's my web series. It's a Descendants fan series. Link to that will be down below. Also, we have a GoFundMe campaign going on for this series as we are trying to raise more money so we can get back to filming sooner. The show's still going on, y'all. It's just taking us a minute to get it complete because this is an independent production. But thank you guys so much for watching and have a good night. 'Cause I work hard to get to this point in my life. I'm blowing up, so don't hate, just congratulate. The Powerpuff Girls will just blow your mind. Buttercup like villains 3 at a time. Bubbles will smile while kicking your butt, and Blossom will lead them out of their rut. Cherish and Powerpuff, 2 of a kind. Both wanna save the world before bedtime. From Townsville, Memphis, New York to LA, the Powerpuff Girls are just here to stay. They coming through and fighting, and everyone they're shocking. You know no one can stop them all because of the